Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'll turn my video on as we get a little closer to start time here. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, I didn't hear you, Lynn.
Hi, Patty.
Uh-oh, is it me again? Yep, I got my speakers off again. I gotta stop doing that. There we go. Okay, now I can hear people. There we go. All right. How is everybody tonight?
Excellent. Thank you.
Good.
Good. Very good.
You all by yourself there? Everybody go home?
Pretty much. Yeah. I'm all by myself. It's all right. It's kind of nice, peaceful. Roxanne says hello. Hello, Roxanne. Waiting for a few more people. We had about 14 sign up. So we're gonna, and I know at least 2 or 3 of them just wanted the recording because they couldn't make it. So we'll give it another minute or 2 and get started. Feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. We're a pretty small group, so we should be able to talk a little bit. Start by sharing my screen here. A lot of practice on the Zoom thing. Get back to in person. I was all for it. Gotta refresh my memory a little here. We have 12 people. I think that's all we're getting. I'm pretty sure the people who said they were gonna miss it, or I'm gonna send them a recording. So we'll go ahead and get started. So this is only an hour long Q&A, but we are always here for you if you have questions about more things related to soil tests and stuff like this. What I wanted to attempt to do is, with spring coming, lots of people think about testing their soils. So before I dive in, which I have a habit of doing, I'm Patty Catalano. I see a lot of names on the screen I've not seen before, so welcome. We're glad to have you. I'm the Ag and Garden Educator for CCE Madison. I also worked for CCE Shenango for 3 years, and I'm a horticulturist. I got my degree from Purdue a long time ago. And so I'm kind of the resident plant geek, and also I have a small farm in Shenango County with fruits and vegetables, and I've learned a lot there too. So I'm kind of teaching both types of things, gardening, as well as a little bit of small ag and homesteading type things. So my goal here is to just give you the information that people normally need from us when it comes to taking a soil sample, and what to look for, how to do it, you know, what role Cornell plays in it, because we don't actually do soil testing here at our office. We can do a pH test, but we do not do the full Morgan or the modified Morgan analysis is what it's called. So that one gives you the phosphorus and potassium, the calcium, the magnesium, a lot of the nutrients and micronutrients that are supposed to be in your soil, hopefully. And it also gives you the pH. And then the company that does it, which is Dairy One, if you can see my screen, if you can't, make sure you let me know, because it's quite possible I'm doing it wrong. But Dairy One is the soil laboratory in Ithaca that Cornell uses or has a relationship with. So when you take your sample, you bring it to us here at the office in Morrisville, and we will actually take it to a drop-off site that's right down the road. And there's a courier that comes around, probably more than just Madison County. I'm betting they do like a circuit of counties, and they pick up the soil samples and they take them back to Ithaca to get them tested. So when you submit, it takes usually a couple of weeks to get your results back. In the height of the season, it can take a little bit longer. Oh, good. You can see my screen. Thanks, Julie. So our part here is to kind of walk you through when to take a soil sample, how to do it properly. The paperwork we can help you with some, but honestly, the Dairy One people, they have a phone number on the paperwork, and that is one of the best ways if you have answers or questions that I can't answer. That's going to be the best way is to call them, because the forms are fairly simple, but there's lots of them depending on what crops you're growing. So there are questions that I won't have the answers to, but they will. So right now you are looking at the taking a soil sample handout. So you're ready to take your soil sample, and you're not really sure about the best way, or, you know, I have 5 acres. How do I need to take a sample from just one spot or from many spots, etc.? When should I take it? So typically the best time to take a soil sample is actually in the fall, because a lot of times the amendments that you apply to your soil, it's better to let them sit over the winter so that they're there and ready in the spring. Some things will leach out, but in general, it's a very general statement. Fall is the best time, and you can see they back me up right here. Fall is generally considered to be the most reliable time, especially when it comes to pH. So, but you know, it's spring and everybody's chomping at the bit. I know I am. I looked at the 10-day forecast and I'm like, no, no more snow. March is always kind of my toughest month because I'm just ready to go. So you look out there and the snow's gone finally, and it's spring, and you want to take your soil sample. It's not a bad time. You can definitely still do it then. And that's certainly when we get the most phone calls and the most samples here at the office to take to the courier site. So what you want to do is you can use a soil corer. That's this tool you're seeing on the screen. There's a tube that has like a cutout section, and you twist it into the ground, and it will actually take a core of the soil. You can also use a soil auger to assist in the gathering of the soil. So we have 2 of the tool on the left and 1 of the tool on the right here in the office that people can actually borrow if you want to take a decent soil sample, because you don't want to take it from the top part of the soil, because up there you've got roots and grass and all sorts of other things. And, you know, some of it depends on what you're doing. So if you look down here, it says sample at the proper depth based on tillage. So, you know, if you have a moldboard plow, which some of you might, this Q&A is for everybody. If you're a homeowner with just a you know, little backyard plot, or if you're a farmer, this is all the same, because it's going to end up being just different forms, and they're going to test for different things based upon the crops you're growing. But the sampling procedure is fairly, you know, pretty much the same. So it depends on what you're doing. And let's see, commercial field samples, you're going to take 15 to 20 plow depth coarse subsamples. So depending on how deep you're plowing, that's where you want to take the core sample. And if you look over here, home landscape samples, each sample should represent only one area. So say you're going to have a vegetable garden in one spot of your lawn, but you want to plant some raspberry canes in the other spot. You need to do 2 different tests, because they take different nutrients and they like different pHs and different soils, etc. And you're not going to treat the soil for each one the same if they need any amendments. We're pretty lucky around here in that a lot of our soils will grow just about anything. They're a very good pH most of the time, and nutrient level. So for each unique area, so in the raspberry patch and in the vegetable patch, you're going to take 10 to 12 cores. Now, if you can't get a core, or if you are far away and you don't, you know, want to drive here to borrow one, etc., you can still take a good sample. You just want to make sure you get about 4 to 6 inches down. Okay, let's see. So you get 4 to 6 inches down in the soil, and you do kind of like a zigzag pattern, like they have right here on this diagram. Okay, you don't want to sample under extremely wet soil conditions, because basically the nutrients in really wet soil are still leaching out. You're not going to get a very, you know, accurate reading of what's in there, because it's so watery. So early spring is not actually a good time. So you want to wait till the ground has thawed. You want to wait till it's dried out. I know that's hard in the spring. But if we get a good rain event and you can wait a couple days, we have pretty good drainage in general. A couple days at least before you take your sample, you should be okay. If you can wait longer, that's fine. That's good too. But, you know, just keep an eye on the weather, because we can get so much rain in the spring. So this is the form that you get when you come in. And also I can send copies of this to everybody's email address. I have all of your email addresses. Then you're going to mix all of those cores together, because you're not looking for, you know, really fine-tuned results. You want really an average of the area is what you want to do, because soil it's complicated, you know, so you're never going to get it perfect. But if you get an average of the area, you're more likely to be able to modify the soil and amend it the way you want it, and get it to what you need to get it to, whether it's raising or lowering pH, or increasing organic matter, something like that. So mix everything together, and then you have to let it dry completely. completely dry. And you don't want to put it in like the oven or anything like that, because, you know, in that soil, you have nutrients that might degrade in the heat. You really just have to put it on a plate. I have a plate here that I use, and you just set it somewhere dry, but not real warm. The top of the refrigerator is good, and let it air dry. And it takes about 2 or 3 days, probably, depending on your soil. Okay. So nice dry soils. And then once you get that, your soil sample all dry, you're going to put it in a box. Mary has a question. How do you do the zigzag pattern, or is this pattern over your yard? Well, basically, Mary, if you look down here too, they've got some examples. I think the zigzag can be kind of, you know, self-created. So over here, there's a vegetable garden, and it's a rectangle. So they're basically saying you want to try and go throughout the rectangle in a fairly even spray, you know, a fairly even zigzag, so that you cover kind of the whole area. All right. And then this little diagram is supposed to be a house with a front yard. Okay. So they actually start all the way back at the house and do a zigzag all the way over here, which they don't give you measurements, but you want to try to get a little bit out of almost the whole area, as good as you can get it. Okay. So let's see. So every star here, you know, represents an individual core sample. So you can do, let's see, take at least 10 to 12 cores, they're saying, in a home landscape example. And then you can do 15 to 20 cores if you're doing like a commercial field. So it depends a little bit on what you're doing. Okay. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers. Okay, no, this is a good point. Avoid unusual areas such as dead furrows, old hedgerows, fence lines, old manure piles, lime piles, or burn piles, and avoid wet areas or severely eroded areas. So, you know, statistically speaking, basically, they're saying, because you're getting an average of the area, if you get a core sample from an old manure pile, that might skew your results. So you don't want to do that unless the entire area is an old manure pile. Okay, so avoid the little areas where you probably aren't going to plant anyway, unless, you know, maybe you're you've got a big field or something like that for commercial farming purposes. But yeah, you don't want to sample from strange areas like that. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any questions so far? Does all of that make sense? Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. So now I'm going to go through what you do once you have the soil sample. Give me just a second. Okay, so once you get your soil sample and it's dry and you bring it here, we will put it in a little box that looks like this. And here's mine. I took a soil sample from out back. We have a teaching garden out back that we're using to help people learn how to grow their own food. And we're going to be planting some fruit trees back there and some grapes and some elderberries, things like that. And I figured I'd better test the soil. So you fill out the box with your information. And if you only have one sample, you can call it whatever you want. Sample number 1, whatever. If you have 3 samples, you need to denote that so that you've got sample number 1, sample number 2, sample number 3, and the sheets say the same thing so that the people in the lab can say, okay, this sample goes with this sheet, or, so that stuff all has to line up. And these are things that we'll explain to you when you come in to the office, or we can do it over the phone, and we can also mail you the forms. So the benefit of bringing us your sample is every Thursday, I'm going to make a trip to the courier with any samples that have come in that week. So if you use us as your shipping, basically, you don't have to pay shipping. The alternative is we can mail you, like if you don't want to drive here, we can mail you the box, the paperwork, you can do it all at home. And then you can take this box and put it in another box, a shipping box, and you can mail this off to the lab. That's also totally possible. All right, let's see. Roxanne has a question. If you are sampling for a tunnel and have different beds and want to plant different plants in each bed, do you need to fill out a separate form for each type of vegetable? Mixed veggies is vague when you are dealing with cukes and tomatoes. Okay. Yeah, that's true. So in general, no, you do not need to fill out a separate form, and you don't need to do different samples. Like, they do have mixed vegetables as one of the categories, which we'll look at here in a second. So, because in general, mixed vegetables can take, a certain range of similar situations. Now, if you're doing blueberries, that's totally different. But mixed vegetables, they tend to like a pH of between 6 and 6.5. 7 is okay too, but that they're really happy around the 6.5 range. And at least with pH, that in particular is very similar. If you're doing like commercial crops, say you're doing large scale, then you will want to submit for separate. But if you're just like a backyard gardener with a mixed vegetables, so it sounds like you might kind of fit somewhere in between. So we may have to look at the forms and determine, because the forms will tell you a lot, and we're going to look at those next. Commercial. Okay. So let's look at the forms, Roxanne, because I have them all up here, and let's see. That will actually help determine commercial vegetable crops. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. So when you come to the office, this is the form you would get for commercial vegetable crops. Up at the top, you'll see you're going to do the modified Morgan, which is only $13.50, and you're going to get back the pH, the buffer pH, which means the lime requirement, if there is one, the percent organic matter in your soil, the phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, iron, zinc, and manganese. I know that's kind of small. I'm betting I can zoom in. There we go. Okay. So you're going to fill out all of this information, and you can leave like the account number blank and all that. You can pay for this by either enclosing a check. Literally, you put it inside the box with the soil. You can put it in a Ziploc bag if you want, but you don't have to. And you can also email Contact Accounting, and you can pay with a credit card over the phone. So all of this stuff right here, if you look up here, there are 4 pages, okay? But mostly you're going to just fill out this first page. But there's more information on the other 3 pages. So you have lab ID, which is for lab only. Then you have the sample ID. This is the name you give it. So if you want to call it high tunnels, and then high tunnel number 1, high tunnel number 2, whatever you want to call it, that you need so that you can tell which spot you're talking about, that's what the sample ID is. and then the corresponding name goes on the box. The date, the soil name, this is something that we can help you with, or if you look down here, Dairy One gives you their website so that you can get some help with the crop code and the soil name resources. So the soil names are funny. They're things like Volusia loam and Honey Eye loam. I know my farm has I think it's Volusia silty clay loam. So they're odd names, and they mean a lot to agronomists and not so much to most of us. But they help the laboratory give you a better result, basically. Tillage depth. Is there any artificial drainage? If you're doing like legumes or a mix, if you're doing like hay, they ask you for a % of legumes, because that, of course, is gonna that's going to affect the nitrogen in your soil, because legumes fix nitrogen. Prior crops, this is also, so all of this is them gathering information from you so they can give you the best test results possible. Okay. And then you can actually submit several. So here's just more space for more samples. You can also request supplemental services. So if you want to check for soluble salts in your soil, soluble salts are things like if you have really, really hard water, like we do here in Morrisville, you wash dishes and they look dirty afterwards because the water's so hard. Soluble salts are what the soil holds on to sometimes when you water, especially with very hard water, and they can build up in your soil and they can burn your plants, the roots and the leaves. Especially, I mean, this is a commercial sheet, but you can really see it in house plants. If you have any house plants, they get a film of white over the top of the soil, and that's what that is. Caroline has a question about if Dairy One can test for heavy metals or other toxins in soils, or do they primarily test for nutrients? They primarily test for nutrients. You can definitely find out about the toxins and metals, but I'm pretty sure they don't do that. That's a special thing that they may know somebody who does, but I'm pretty sure they only test for nutrients and little things like that. Like I said, the soluble salts and that kind of thing. Okay. So then you get to the crop codes. So if we go back up to the first page, you're supposed to enter crop codes here where it says what the crops were and what you want the crops to be. So say you started out planting hay, and now you want to see if you can actually plant a whole field of wheat. Okay, so you're going to put in here what the prior and the future crops are, and the crop codes are here. So, but be careful, because it says use for sample submission form A up here. Okay, but if you scroll up to the top again, we are using form V right there. So you don't want to enter the wrong code because you're looking at the wrong chart. Let's see. Matt has a question. When they ask for crops planted in years past, 1, 2, 3, and more years ago, do you simply say generally vegetables when one rotates what every, oh, okay. Yeah, if you're just like a mixed vegetables thing and you're just rotating them, yeah. Yep, you can just say mixed vegetables in those previous ones. Now, and just to clarify, Matt, this form is for commercial vegetable crops. So we're going to look at the H form too, because the H form is one of the most used forms, and that's for homeowners. So they may approach that a little differently. So we'll take a look at the differences. So we need to look at form V. Okay, so here you go. Form V is right here. And as you can see, there are different codes for different crops. Okay. lots of different ones. So these 2 pages, this one and this one, give you all the crop codes you need for all the forms that we have. And if you look at Form H, which we're going to next, here's the crop codes for that. And as you can see, it's a lot smaller. So they lump mixed vegetables together for home, garden, lawn, and landscape. That's what this is. So they're assuming that you're going to grow lettuces right next to, you know, carrots right next to broccoli, right next, you know, so you're not commercial where you're growing vegetables in a much larger area. So you really need a finer tuned test. So whereas up here, you can say, you know, if you've got a lot of beets and stuff like that, you can do a test for each crop. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question earlier. Roxanne, right? Yeah, Roxanne. Okay. So you would use the V form for sure. Okay, and also, you know, if you're doing it for ornamentals, here are the ornamental trees and shrubs codes. Okay, and they've separated it out. And they tell you why. So the ones up here at the top prefer a pH of 4.5 to 5.9. And then the ones down here are a little higher. They have a 6 to 7.5. And the codes are right here, ALG and SAG. So, and then they've got some other categories, flowering annuals, perennials in general, roses. So they kind of separate out things that are more particular. So obviously blueberries don't like necessarily the same kind of soil as strawberries. So they do have different categories for the H form. Okay. So every form, no matter which one you use, will come with this exact same two-sided page with the codes. And you just have to make sure you use the right chart based upon the page you're using. Okay. How are we doing? Everything making sense so far? Any questions? I'm gonna get a drink of water. So the costs vary, but they're very reasonable. Most of them average around $15, give or take a couple dollars. I think there's $17. And if you decide to do more than just the standard Morgan or the modified Morgan test, it's called, then it just adds on an additional fee. So like the soluble salts one that I mentioned, that was an additional $6.25, I think. So, all right, let's go to the H form next. And these are not the only 2 forms. I will show you the other ones too. But these are probably, like I said, the 2 that we use the most. So it makes sense to kind of focus on them. Okay, so H is for homeowners. Homeowners, garden, and landscape type submissions. Okay, Roxanne has a question. So if I am companion planting, should I use H? Probably. Yeah. Unless you're planting, you know, like whole hoop houses in one crop, you should probably use Form H. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Okay, so Form H, again, up at the top, they usually tell you how much it costs. If not, it's on the other side. Same thing, same format. You put your name and all your information in there. You can enclose a check. That's what most people do. It's pretty easy. And then again, sample ID, date, plant name. Now that's different. So if you're doing, let's say we're doing blueberries. And so you just put sample ID, blueberry bed number 1. Okay. It's entirely up to you. Excuse me. And then you put the date, the name of the plant, which may be redundant if you use it as a sample ID, and that's fine. And then the crop code from the back. I have another question. Matt, If every year a third of the garden is planted to garlic with the rest in mixed vegetables, can Dairy One run 2 tests with 1 box of soil sample? Trying to remember, because I think I've called them about that before. I don't believe so, because the trick is, because each box is literally like just the right amount of soil for 1 test.
Hmm.
So you have to submit 2 samples if you have 2 crops. And the box has to be filled all the way to the top too. That we've gotten calls before where, you know, somebody got us a soil sample at the lab and it was only like half full. They have to have a certain amount of soil. So yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I can double check on that, but I'm pretty sure they can only do 1 test per sample. Okay. All right, so the crop code, again, that's from the chart on the next page down here. So this is the chart for Form H, and we're doing blueberries. So BLB right there is the crop code. Okay, then the soil texture, sandy, loamy, silty, or clay soil. Okay, this is not like, they know that you don't have really the ability to be 100% certain on this. So you can go ahead and do your best guess. There's a couple tests that you can do at home to determine whether your soil is, you know, sandy, loamy, silty, or clay. So first, let's start talking a little bit about what are these particles? What is this? You know, what does that mean? So sandy soil, sand is the largest soil particle, and clay is the smallest soil particle. Loam and silt are in between. Okay. Clay, funny enough, even though it's the smallest particle, it's the most nutrient dense. So people who complain about clay soils, if you can amend clay soil, you can have amazing soil because it's very, you know, nutrient rich soil. It's just the particles are so small that the plants don't have the ability to really do what's called cation exchange capacity, where the soil in the presence of water exchanges, I'm trying to remember the words for it, but basically the nutrients can't get absorbed by the roots because of the small particles. So that may be more than you ever wanted to know about soil. Sandy soil is the opposite. You know, the nutrients just go right through because it's sand. So the plants have problems, you know, having the time for the plant to pick it up. You know, the nutrients just kind of wash right through when it rains. And loamy and silty, those are both pretty good soils, because what happens is they're usually a mix. Like, you don't usually have 100% clay or 100% silt. Soil is a lot of times a mixture of several different things, but what they're asking for is the texture. So what does it feel like to you? You know, go out, dig a hole, grab a handful of soil, and try to do what's called the ribbon test, where you take the soil in your hand and you push it between your thumb and your index finger and form a ribbon, and you just squeeze it. And you don't want it to be real wet. Okay, it's got to be like damp so it holds together. So if your soil ribbon, if you can make like a ribbon really long, then you've got quite a lot of clay in that soil. And also, when you let go of the soil, and if your hand is kind of powdery feeling, that is silty and clay. Both silt and clay leave kind of like a powdery soft feeling on your skin. We had another question. Let's see. Lorna, can you go by the US Web Soil Survey for soil ID? Yes, you can. In the commercial form in particular, you know, they're asking for those names, but you could still go, like if you use the H form, you could still go to the Soil Web Survey, and it's going to tell you a lot about the soil. And it'll probably, if it calls it a silty clay loam, okay, that means what? That it's silty, and it also has some clay, but the primary texture is actually loam, right? So it depends on the wording. Let me stop this for a minute and I'll show you the soil survey that Lorna's talking about, because if you're any kind of GPS geek like me, it's kind of fun to look at. Let's see. So the USDA did a soil survey. I'm gonna go there. Okay. All right. Can you see that? That is the Web Soil Survey. So it's a collection of data basically from across the nation. And the cool part is you can actually enter a area. If you come over here, these are all drop-down menus. And you can choose, we're gonna go to New York. And we're gonna go to Madison County. And let's see. So we're going to choose Madison County, and let's see what happens. Show area layers and hit view. Okay, here's Madison County. Now over here it says set AOI. AOI is short for area of interest. And all that does is you create the AOI yourself, and then it tells you what kind of soil is in there. Okay, so I'm going to draw a figure. Let's just do anywhere, doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to draw it. There we go. That's a pretty big area, really. And it's going to create an area of interest. Okay, that's the little triangle I drew, right? And then up here, if you look at the soil map, I believe it will tell you all the soils in that little triangle. Look at that. So we have, can you see that? Because it switched screens a little bit. Yes, Roxanne says if you go to your county tax map, they also show soil type. And you can view your property and it shows topographic and soil type. Yes, that is also true. My love of gadgetry loves this site though. So hopefully you can see over here, Alden Mucky Silt Loam. It has 228 acres, 0.6 acres in this triangle that I drew. If anybody's interested, I can take you through how to do this. I'm not so familiar with the site that I can do everything on it, but I've definitely like drawn areas of interest and been able to come up with properties and what kind of soil is there. Angola Silt Loam, you see. Now you could click on those too, and they'll give you a better description of what an Angola Silt Loam is. Okay. The profile, a soil profile is literally like they will take a, how do you describe it? They will take the soil and take a slice out of it, kind of like a piece of cake, you know, and they will look at all the layers and they will test those. So in this particular soil, from 0 to 10 inches, you have a silt loam. From 10 to 22 inches, you have more silt loam, which is pretty good soil. Silty loam, you know, is pretty fertile. 22 to 26 inches, you get weathered bedrock. Okay. It doesn't, I don't believe it tells you like pH or anything like that, but you can get a lot of information about this. It's really kind of geeky, but cool. All right, so let's go back to our form H. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. Okay. All right. So hopefully that could help you with the soil texture. I can help you with the soil texture too. Like if you're not real sure, you can bring some in and we'll do the ribbon test together. I'll show you how to do it. And then soil drainage. So this is, basically it's a judgment call. If after the rain, is there standing water for a long time, then you've got pretty poor drainage. If it stands for a little while and then eventually drains, it's fair, etc. Like I said, they're not looking for perfection here. They're just kind of looking for your impressions of things. The soil test, that's where you put the package that you want, which is right down here. So most people are going to do the pre-plant package. So 833E is what you'd put in there. So this is, you're starting a new bed and you've not planted anything there before. Okay. Maintenance is if it's an area you have been planting actively. Okay. Pre-plant troubleshooting. This is if you suspect that you have a problem. So if you read right here, they do make the forms very informative. I mean, if you read the forms, I practically don't need to be involved, but I'm happy to help. So that's fine. This troubleshooting test should be used to determine if poor plant growth may be related to high salt concentrations in the soil due to over fertilization or road salting practices. Right. So earlier I missed mentioning that if you fertilize too much, some of the soluble salts, so soluble means that it will dissolve in water, basically. So your over the head watering fertilizers are that kind of thing, but they can build up in the soil. Some parts of them can. So that's bad. Okay. Home lawn as well. There's that test if you need that for your turf. And I honestly am not sure what these are. Solvita, CO2 burst, SLAN, and VAST. I'm not sure what those are. I've never had anybody ask about those, so I should probably find out myself just in case. Let's see. So those are the supplemental services though that you would enter once if you decide you need those, and then you just subtotal it and you're done. You put the form and the payment in the box with the soil, and I take it over to the courier site, which is up the hill at SUNY Morrisville, because the dairy barn up there, they do testing too. So they've got a courier coming through, like I think they come through at least once a week. So yeah, that way you don't have to ship it. All right. We should probably get to the results here before find them here. So when you get your results, they might look a little strange, but you can actually put my email on the form as well, and they'll send me the results. There it is. Okay, there we go. All right. And we can discuss them over the phone, or you can come in with them, either one. But they will email you your results too. Okay, so you're looking at a sample we got back last year. And if you look over here, they used the H form. It was mixed vegetables. And it was before anything was planted. This gentleman said that he had loamy soil with very good drainage or good drainage. And these are the results. So this is what you'll get back from your test. So they go through and they don't just give you what the results are, but they give you recommendations. Sometimes they don't give you a lot of information about nitrogen because nitrogen leaches out of the soil really quickly. So sometimes it's difficult to give good recommendations because you may apply a lot and it just leaches. It just depends on your soil. So in this gentleman's soil, they're suggesting that he will need a total of 3.5 ounces of nitrogen for every 100 square feet of garden for the entire year. So he's a little low on nitrogen, naturally occurring. The soil organic matter content will help lower this amount or rate by providing nitrogen. It's best, however, to apply this amount throughout the growing season. Okay. See information sheet for calculations. And we're going to look at the information sheet here in a minute too. So they're going to give you the pH, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. So when you go to the store and you buy fertilizers, those are the big things that you see on there is the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. Sometimes you have to flip the bag over, but it should give you the analysis of how much of those things is in your fertilizer, because those are the big three, basically. Plants need other things, magnesium, manganese, but nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the big guys, the big guns. All right, so here's the lab results. Ooh, hang on one second. Oh. I got someone at the door. I will be right back. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So we're looking at the lab results and we have a soil pH of 6.8 and they have a note here. Okay, so that's all right. The phosphorus existing is very high, 634 pounds per acre. So this is, what's already there. Potassium is high, 1,192 pounds per acre. And organic matter is 12.2, which is, they don't make a note there, but that's okay. So over application of fertilizer and compost can lead to excessive nutrient levels. Reevaluate your soil management. So it sounds like they're saying you are fertilizing too much, which is it's not uncommon. The phosphorus is usually a good indicator of that because a lot of fertilizers are high in phosphorus. Matt has a question. If fresh manure is applied to the garden, how long do you recommend one should wait before testing the soil? I think 3 months is what I've heard, minimum. Yeah, to give it some time to kind of rest and blend in with the soil a bit. Okay. So the next one is also an H, but if you look over here, the code is RSP because this gentleman was also wanting to grow raspberries. So he had a test for a different spot, but also a different crop. So this is loamy and fair drainage, and he would like to grow raspberries there. So they're saying only nitrogen is needed. And in fact, the laboratory results, if you look down here, he's got a pretty high pH. It's not, I don't think it would mean that he can't grow raspberries there, but it means he probably needs to put down some kind of acidifier, nitrogen. Like they said, nitrogen will acidify some when you apply it. And it says nitrogen is not applied before planting. However, during the first year of planting, apply 1.0 to 1.3 ounces of nitrogen per 100 feet of row 4 weeks after planting. Okay, so that's their recommendations for that. But basically, there's way too much phosphorus and way too much potassium in there already for raspberries. The organic matter looks kind of low too, honestly. So it's nice because they don't just tell you what's there and everything. They tell you what to do about it, you know, based upon your crop that you're going to grow. All right. And then we had another vegetable garden. And let's see. This is a different test, a different lady. Roxanne is wondering, how do you figure ounces of nitrogen? Let's see. I believe that's probably covered on the information sheet. Yeah, we will get to that shortly because I need to move it along here. There's a lot to talk about. Okay. So this one is very different because it's a completely different person and different soil. So they're doing a vegetable garden. They have good drainage, but loamy soil. Their soil pH is a little high, but for mixed vegetables, they've got way too much phosphorus and potassium in the soil already. The organic matter, though, look at that, 20%. That's a pretty high organic matter. Okay, so they're recommending, again, just using nitrogen. You will need a total of 3.5 ounces of nitrogen for every 100 square feet of garden for the entire year. So she's going to have to apply quite a bit more nitrogen to her soil. Okay, and then finally, we've got flower and rose beds. It's totally different, again, because you've got a different crop and a different area. So they talk a little bit about the soil pH adjustments up there. And then they've got the pH down here, and it's a little high in phosphorus and potassium, and it's kind of low in organic matter. I mean, it's a little low, not too bad. So these are the results that I can go through with you if you choose to do one of these tests. So let's look at the Let us look at the information sheet next. Stop sharing. And this will be kind of our last little bit. Here it is. Okay. Vegetables, soil. I'm going to look at the raspberry one because that one was pretty interesting, I thought. Okay, so they also send you the instructions on kind of what to do. So this is let's see, getting the most out of your raspberry soil test report. So this is 7 pages long, and it tells you in there the general information, the pH that's ideal for raspberries. And then it goes into more details about fertilizer sources and quantities and how to figure that out. Okay. So the handout that you get, basically, I can also print these out for you when you get them in your inbox, because I think they just send them in email form. I'm not sure that they actually send you a hard copy, but I'm happy to print those things out. So let's see if it talks about the percentages, because I think it does. Yeah, here we go. So here's the nutrient analysis part. And they give you a nice little chart about how much of nitrogen, how many ounces per 100 feet of row. Now let's see if it talks about how to determine how many ounces. Because it might also say on the bag. Let's see. Higher bolded rate. Now, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one, I think, but they do go into organic fertilizers, which is nice. They tell you, you know, the amounts of the different nutrients in those fertilizers. And that's a whole other class, really. So, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So lots of good information comes out of that soil test. So for only between $13 and $20, you get a lot of value, really. And all of the handouts have similar charts to help you figure out, you know, the rates. Yes, Roxanne, I can send this to you. Thanks for coming, Caroline. Let us know if you have any questions. How often you should test soils? Maybe about every 3 years, unless you notice something drastic changing, you know, like if after year 1 or 2, you notice something drastic, test right away, really. But usually it's like every 3 to maybe even 5 years, if, you know, nothing's changed a lot. So, yep, I can send off an email to everybody with, all of the things that we talked about, the handouts and the charts and all of this for information. But, you know, remember the information is geared towards that person's soil test. So it may not actually be the best thing for you. You're welcome, Lorna. Thanks for coming. Any other questions before we sign off? And I'm always available. All my information is in the signature of my email, which you'll be getting more information from me. So you'll get that too. You can always contact me if you have questions. If there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and sign off. Have a good evening. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Have a good night.